Hi everyone, it's Victor speaking, and I'm here today to discuss what 2021 will bring for us. So, this is the time of the year when we are at the border of a decade, and it is always an exciting time, and plenty of you are seeking advice about what the following year might bring for us. So I hope you will find this video useful, and I'm going to try to walk you through what type of planetary energies we will be experiencing in 2021. If you would like to have a personal reading with me, then you will find the link below. So let's get started. Basically, we have been through a hell, I think, in 2020. Everyone has been affected by it. Everyone has had restrictions going on in their lives. And that's not a shock, really, with that Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter conjunction, which has been around basically the entire year, except a couple of weeks in the summer when they were a little bit apart. But we can say that the entire year was about them. And the good news is that finally Saturn is separating from Pluto starting on the 26th of December. And this has acted like a karmic reset button. It was more about restructuring the powers, falling away from the powers, political transformations were presented to us. And this is basically all about a new era. So, unfortunately, this year has not finished yet, as we will have a Saturn Jupiter conjunction happening on 0 degree of Aquarius in the upcoming week. And basically, Saturn and Jupiter is has got a meeting point every 20 years. And this is a special one because the very last meeting point between them in the sign of Aquarius, or majorly in air signs, was approximately about 800 years ago. So on top of my head, the very last started in 1226. And so Saturn will enter the sign of Aquarius on the 17th of December, and then Jupiter enters on the 19th. And these two together basically start in a new synodic cycle. These two always talk about a new social meta, society enters basically a new chapter. And basically, Jupiter and Saturn will be meeting here in the next 150 years, which happens approximately every 19 to 20 years. So it is all about Aquarius this time around. Aquarius is a fixed air sign. So what is air signs about? It's all about gathering facts, technology, new concepts, new ways of communication, new ways of travels. We are going to be more interested in theories and concepts. It is more about gaining perspective in life. By the way, we had one exception here when in 1980 Saturn and Jupiter met in the sign of Libra. So as I said, in the next 150 years, it's going to be more about air signs. So they're going to be meeting Aquarius, then Gemini, and so forth. So we had that short period of time when they met in an air sign. And if we really think about what happened at that time, that's when the mobile phones, internet, Wi-Fi really kind of hit the world. And the following time, which was in 2000, Saturn and Jupiter met in the sign of Taurus. And Taurus is more about a desire to make money. Of course, these two are going to be linking together because if I mix the air sign somehow with the earth, earth is all about tangible results, then mostly it was about how much money I can make through websites or phones, technology, and so forth. So if you want to look at what Aquarius is about, Aquarius, as I said, is a fixed air sign, and it tends to connect more to global matters. this is something to do with the higher mind. Aquarius in modern astrology is ruled by Uranus, and Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury. So, and that's how the mind comes into the picture. It acts like cosmic downloads. Aquarius is the unreachable. So something which we didn't have clue about so far that is going to be available for us. So therefore, one of my first prediction I'm going to make is that the scientific fields are going to be a lot more emphasized. Um, I also believe that something to do with space travels are going to be very prominent. And that is not a shock anyway, because we've got the very first time when, for instance, a women went up to the space was somewhere in about 40 years ago. And that's when we had a very strong Sagittarius energy getting activated. Now we will have Sagittarian energy again by the representation of Jupiter. So I do believe that something to do with space travel and women are going to be somehow rising. So the Space Shuttle Challenger glided to a landing in California in 1983, sometime in June. And as I said, that year was a very Sagittarius influence. There were 5 planets in Sagittarius, including Uranus, and something to do with Neptune and Jupiter as well. So, and Sagittarius is the sign of a half horse, a half human centaur, and it has got an arrow. And Jupiter in Aquarius is very much describing this energy. What was going on in 1983, the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, kind of it gets repeated by having Jupiter in the sign of Aquarius. So I think another prediction I would like to make is that women will rise. I think we will see a lot more female people on in the government or even as rulers, not rulers, but like the head of the state and so forth. And as I mentioned, this conjunction is going to be happening on 0 degree of Aquarius, which is very interesting because 0 is all about a childish energy. So it's a fresh start, starting something completely new. And Aquarius is also called as the water bearer sign. Interestingly enough, the word Aquarius contains the word aqua, which means emotions. And plenty of us tend to believe that Aquarius is an emotionally detached sign. And to a certain extent, it's absolutely true. But Aquarius carries the emotions within. Aquarius is more to do with progressive outlook. So another prediction I would like to make is that I think robots are going to be taking some of the work force over. And it's mainly because companies will want to try to save some money on labor costs. So I do believe that, unfortunately, this is going to kind of force people to have a more self-employment started. On one hand, it's something good. Saturn and Jupiter talks about working hard for our long-term goals. Saturn Jupiter is very much about working time regulation. So I do believe that people are going to take some initiatives, which is very much about Aquarian. They're going to become more innovative when it comes to their business sense. And one of the reasons why I believe that robots, aliens are going to be somehow a major topic for us, because if we look back in history a little bit, then in 1993, when we had quite a major Aquarian energy activation, that's when certain type of films and movies started coming to light, such as X-Files, if you remember, and that's all about aliens and UFOs. That's when we had Saturn in the sign of Aquarius, the very last. So I believe that the film industry is going to be seeing a massive improvement as well, and that's going to be maybe connected to UFOs, aliens, Star Wars, and all those type of films. Speaking about UFOs, aliens, I think most countries, or there is going to be an advancement going on in there. Maybe there is going to be some type of secrets revealed about what they have found so far in the next 20 years. Saturn and Jupiter together is very much about a great movement. It does talk about a great work which needs to be done. So again, it is there somehow a karmic reset button, giving a new foundation to the society. Saturn is the foundation. Saturn is somehow talking about the restructuring. So whatever is going to be happening in the next 2 years, that's going to be marking the next 20 years in our life. Saturn always wants everything with moderation. It wants to test and it wants to put a brake on things. Jupiter wants to expand and be optimistic, but also Jupiter rules the kings. So I also believe, and that's going to be my next prediction, that some of the kingdoms are going to be falling, and maybe we see even some reunion happening as well between countries, different alliances. Especially, I think the next couple of years are going to be extremely important for UK, Hong Kong, India, Pakistan, and of course US as well with their Pluto return in the next couple of years. But I do believe that this is going to be more about democracy. Some of the kingdoms are somehow going to be, we're going to experience a fall for them. Moving on, Aquarius is very much, as I mentioned earlier, it is all about a distance. It is an emotional sign, but at the same time, it is containing the emotions. It's not pouring really onto the world. If you really want to be thinking about Aquarius as one of the tarot cards, then it would be represented by the card 17, which is called the Star. And you will be able to see on that picture a woman who is pouring the water onto the earth and back into the ocean or into the lake. By one foot, she is standing on the ground and the other one is in the water. So I do believe, because we're talking about nature here, I do believe that there is going to be a lot more thinking about, which is very much Saturn in Aquarius, like the thinking cap, how to save the world, how to protect animals, how to protect the environment, as well as something to do with pollutions. I think we're going to be seeing some major advancements. I think even when it comes to things like electricity or something to do with housing system, this is also going to be changing. Of course, we know that 2020 was about COVID-19. And probably a major question of everyone is whether it's going to be staying around or not. And in my opinion, it will. Because Aquarius very much talks about social distancing, and Saturn is still some type of restriction for us. So I do believe that the travel industry is going to be going through some major transformation. I do believe that there is going to be new borders or something to do with new legislation about immigration, how we can travel. I think the traveling is going to be a lot more smart as well. meaning that, for instance, you're going to have a certificate about having certain type of vaccines injected into you before you actually make a travel. I think it's going to be more technological, so probably not just the human forces will be standing at the gate, at the border, but maybe some technological advancement in there as well. Jupiter rules passports, so I believe that there is going to be a new form of passport as well. So, as I mentioned, I believe it's going to be very much about new legislations in regards to travel and immigration. And interestingly enough, if we start looking at some of the law of immigration, or for instance, the British Nationality Act of 1981, which happened actually with the second Jupiter conjunction in the sign of Libra, although it only came into force in 1983. And as I said, that was a very heavy Sagittarius energy. I think some of these laws will be replaced as well. Around that time, I do know that also the Australian, like, points-based immigration system was introduced. I think that is also going to be either changed or renewed, or maybe most of the countries are going to be using this point-based immigration system. Talking about major technical advancements, I think there is going to be more something to do with the satellites or Skynet. As I said, air sign is all about collecting information, gathering data, reading. So I am expecting a major transformation around books as well. So we might be seeing smart books. I think reading is going to be a lot more important than ever before. Something around the knowledge. Knowledge in the sense that I think the government will want to give more knowledge to people. So I think the university costs will be cut slightly bit. And probably one of the reasons why, because the Immigration Act is going to be a lot harder. So there is not going to be these international students that easy. I think the entrance exam system is going to be changing as well. Education is definitely going to be one of the major reset for us, because even going back in history, in 1226 onwards, that's when universities started opening up their doors to public. It was more available for everyone. The ink, the paper kind of appeared. Don't get me wrong, they were writing before as well, but they were writing on silk, and it wasn't really affordable for others, and plenty of people had literacy issues. So I believe that's one of the reasons I believe that something is going to be changing in the education. I think there is going to be a lot more homeschooling involved. And I do believe that one of the major work for our next decade or so is going to be around education. So those who want to be looking for a job, for instance, such as language teaching, I think it's going to be thriving. Private tutoring, especially online groups, online education is going to be extremely enhanced. I do believe that also they are going to be discovering new planets. So I'm expecting a major restructuring of astrology as well. Astrology is ruled by Aquarius and Uranus, but in traditional perspective, astrology is still ruled by Mercury. And the reason being is because Mercury is the planet of twilight. That's the only planet which has no connection with the sun and the moon at the same time. Mercury rules Gemini, and the following sign is Cancer, so there is no major aspect going on between them two. And the other sign it rules is a Virgo, and the previous sign is Leo. So the Virgo energy has also no major aspect formed with Leo. And that is one of the reasons why Mercury likes being in the first house. That's Mercury's planetary enjoyment, the planetary joy. The reason why, because but there are plenty of reasons for it. And I don't want to be speaking about Mercury a lot because that's not our topic. But the first house is so much to do with your body, and your body functioning starts basically with the first breath you take, and that's very much Mercury activity. Mercury rules your lungs, your breathing, and anything to do with your breathing system, basically. The reason why I wanted to talk about Mercury a little bit is because Mercury is going to be playing quite a big role next year, because with the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, especially those ones who were born towards the end of January, February, Mercury is also going to be in the sign of Aquarius. So we will be impacted by Mercury quite a lot. As I mentioned, Jupiter and Saturn together are very much about working experiences. So I think working from home is going to be major, probably less offices. And Saturn is like an authority figure. So I think companies will hire people who kind of be creating some boundaries to the workers, and then they're going to be checking what work they have done or what they are doing on their computer and so forth. So I'm expecting a little bit of a big brother type of effect happening in the next 20 years. Um, at the same time, I also would like to mention that Saturn and Jupiter together are completely different energies. Because Saturn is very much about stabilization, very much about restrictions and hurdles. And Jupiter just wants to push through, wants to give plenty of things. And Saturn says, no, we shouldn't be doing that. And Saturn is still going to be the captain here. And the reason being is because Saturn is the traditional ruler of Aquarius. So Jupiter has been kind of used to giving in to Saturn because obviously they spent an entire year in the sign of Capricorn, and therefore Jupiter was under the rulership of Saturn. However, Jupiter is going to be gaining some strength in the sign of Aquarius by turn position. But I'm going to come back onto that a little bit later on. But the whole idea here is that the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction later on in the, well, February, June, and December are pretty much going to be squared by Uranus from the sign of Taurus. Now, Uranus is a rebellious energy. So I believe those are going to be times when there is going to be demonstrations. Uranus unfortunately rules criminals as well. I don't want to be a bad news bearer, but I'm expecting certain type of demonstrations, protests, even terror attacks in some countries. I think it's going to be including Canada, Germany, the majority of US. I think some European countries are going to be affected as well, maybe Spain. Yeah, I haven't really gone through all the countries yet, so I'm just trying to think about them on top of my head. But I might be coming back with a detailed reading on some of the countries as well. But Saturn and Jupiter squaring Uranus is kind of all about destabilization. It's a very unresting energy. Saturn is very much about the tradition, and Uranus is all about the new progressive energy. So in my opinion, there is going to be a clash between the old and the new systems, which is going to be affecting people as well, because unfortunately, Moon is going to be playing a big role in the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction chart. Yes, I also would like to mention, I mean, I would like to talk about the virus a little bit. I think the virus is not going away at the moment, not till about 2023. Therefore, the social distancing is going to be staying around for a while. And I also believe that there could be new virus on the horizon as well, especially something to do with air type of things. So the pollen allergies are going to be a lot more emphasized. And what really came to my mind with the air signs was the bird flu, something in regards to that. Very much I'm expecting. Um, I think Aquarius is all about the extreme energies and it does rule weather conditions. So I'm expecting extreme weather conditions taking place. So especially air related ones. So something to do with high winds, tornadoes, hurricanes, and on an intellectual level, I think cyber attacks are going to be very prominent as well. I also believe that holistic health is going to be seeing a major growth because Aquarius talks about communities. So I think more and more communities are going to be formed. Small little groups, because Saturn is more about consolidation, more about commitment. So more about just like moderation, really. And I think health industry is going under a restructuring energy as well. I also believe that even operations will be done by some robots or with some technological ways. Maybe a doctor is going to be, directing the robot's hands and so forth. So I think we've got a very interesting time ahead of us, surely. Talking about health issues, I think in US there is going to be a major health issue of one of the politicians. It's either the current prime minister or Trump, but something is going to be changing there, and that's how I believe that the female uh, power is going to be rising, and I'm expecting that somewhere by 2022. So Jupiter is very much about the law, and Saturn is all about the moral code and the rules. Aquarius is more about breaking the rules. So that was one of the reasons why I believe that there was going to be some clashes going on between new law and the new rules governments will might come up. I also noticed that because we've got quite a major Sagittarian Saturnian influence going on, especially with the nodes triggering the sign of Sagittarius and plenty of Capricorn energy going on in the Saturn Jupiter conjunction chart. I think NASA or the EU somehow will be restructured. I think more countries will leave the EU as well. I kind of see the next 20 years is going to be the end of EU as well. I also spoken about the Saturn Uranus square going on. And of course, Uranus is in the sign of Taurus, so I think new financial systems will be introduced. Maybe some of the financial system will be replaced. It's going to be innovated, or even the applications or the money is going to be somehow virtual. Um, I also believe that some banks will be crashing as well, especially in the next 3 years. Another important topic which might emerge in the next couple of years is going to be the discrimination and the genderism. So I do believe that they will legalize in most countries for anyone to get married. Um, or they are going to be taking away the rights from them. So Aquarius tends to be going to the extremes, but somehow it is going to be an important topic for us. Flying devices, which is very Aquarian, is going to become as a means of transportation. Meaning that I can imagine cars will be flying, or somehow we're going to be using the air as a possibility of transportation. I think petroleum and gas from the earth will no longer be the energy we use. I think it's going to be replaced with new waves of technology, or maybe quantum technology, or we're going to be using the power of wind or air. Um, so something to do with invisible type of waves, brain waves, cosmic waves, and so forth. I'm also expecting new social media channels. I wouldn't even be shocked if Facebook would be replaced somehow, or there would be new regulation around social media usage. So you might be more monitored how you use your Facebook and all these type of social media channels. So I'm expecting major new applications to pop up on our screens in the next couple of years as well. From a political standpoint of view, um, actually, I'm expecting in the next 3 years America to be divided. I kind of believe that in the next 20 years, somehow the presidency is not going to be as extreme anymore. I think there is going to be little regions in America which is somehow they are going to have their own prime minister or president or something like that. From an Earth point of view, um, you do need to know that the Earth orbit is slightly bit changing. And this was last somewhere in the 60s. So I'm expecting some major earthquakes happening as well. And unfortunately, it looks like some area will be, in a sense, devastated. But on a positive note, I do see a very strong indications for the health department to be coming up with new ways of curing certain type of illnesses, such as cancer. I've also spoken about the languages, but something else came up to my mind that somehow there is going to be technological advancements happening, allowing us the language differences to be disappearing. And I also believe that somehow um, they are going to be allowing us to live longer as well. So maybe they are going to be coming up with new medicines or injections or something like that, which is going to allow you to increase the lifespan of ours. Um, yeah, I also believe that somehow how the financial structure is going to be happening is that somehow the tax will change as well. So either we won't be paying taxes, or somehow it is just going to get restructured. I can hardly imagine that we won't be paying taxes. I think we will, but in a sense, either it's reduced or somehow things are going to be a little bit more bearable. What we need to understand is that Capricorn is a structured, rigid sign. And having Pluto in there has made things too rigid, too outdated. And having Uranus, of course, squaring that Saturn-Jupiter energy next year, 3 times, mid-February, mid-June, and towards the end of the year as well. That is exactly what it's talking about. Things which are outdated has to be binned. So the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in the previous sign, Capricorn, was very much concerned about bringing material plan to execution, bringing concrete things. But Aquarius is more about the new vision, the new type of architecture, the new building. So it's not based anymore on material realities. It is more inspired by the universe itself. I would compare the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction pretty much to the Tarot card. So on the Tarot card, you can see a tower which is being struck by a thunderstorm. And somehow the top of the tower just breaks off and there is a person who is falling out. That's exactly the energies I'm describing to you, which I'm expecting to be happening in the next couple of years. Someone on the top will basically fall down, and it could indicate that the rich people will somehow fall down, and some of the poor people are going to be rising in a sense. This Saturn-Jupiter conjunction is going to be happening on a fixed star called Altair. Now, Altair is currently approaching, well, it's around 1 degree at the moment, and it's a pale yellow dwarf star, and that's the brightest star in the constellation of Aquila. Now, the Aquila is basically the neck of an eagle. And if you start thinking about the eagle, I mean, that's such an interesting thing, because the eagle has got a huge vision, but the eagle cannot really see close by. Now, eagle is said to represent the Roman god Jupiter. So obviously Jupiter is kind of going to gain a little bit of a strength on that fixed star. And Altair pretty much talks about high honors and advancements, but it is also associated with Prometheus. So Prometheus was the person who brought fire to the people on Earth. And he was a daring human, right? And then he stole the fire from the gods. So we're talking about some very strong humanitarian action, which includes boldness and courage. But at the same time, it's somehow a personal glory as well. Unfortunately, on a mundane level, Altair is very much associated with kidnapping and bombs and missiles and nuclear weapons and so forth. So, and in a sense, Aquila or Altair is very much associated with US. So I do believe that we might be expecting, especially some major things happening in the next 2-3 years in America in regards to that. And I'm also seeing, because I'm also looking at the chart of Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, and we've got a major Saturnian influence going on, still a major Capricorn energy. The reason being is because we've got Mercury, Pluto are still in Saturnian signs. Saturn and Jupiter being in the sign of Aquarius, which in traditional astrology is also ruled by Saturn as well. So there is a major Saturnian influence, which is just indicating to me that somehow we are going to be trying to come out of some of the chaos we have created for us. I also see that the highest planets at the moment of Saturn-Jupiter conjunction is actually Chiron and Mars. Not to mention that Mars is very much in a domicile position. So somehow, again, that is just an indication of some of the possibilities of people standing up, fighting for their own rights, speaking up, speaking their minds. And there is also Moon involved in this story, which is not necessarily a great news. Moon being in the sign of Aries at the moment of Saturn-Jupiter conjunction is all about, that the anger within us is basically fueled by emotions. So Mars and the and the Moon energy together is very much about how angry people can become. So overall, to summarize things, because I think we've been talking quite a long time, it looks to me that the next 20 years is all about moving away from the material possessions, moving away from robbing Earth and the resources of the Earth, and somehow creating something else, because it's a clear message that the way we live at the moment, people are not necessarily great anymore. And that Aquarius energy can bring us great advancements to these matters. And in a way, I think we need to be allowing ourselves to discover new possibilities, such as, no, it wouldn't be a shock if healthcare would be digitalized, laser technology would be more pronounced, healing practices, alternative healing practices would be thriving. I'm very much seeing that. And Aquarius is very much about human efforts. So we do need for this. And I think the human efforts, what it indicates in this chart is that we're going to be seeing developments about homelessness or hunger, or especially equal rights. So, well, I think this is pretty much what I wanted to share with you today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Oh, and by the way, one more thing I wanted to mention very quickly here. This very much of a Saturnian Capricorn energy, which I'm seeing being activated by having the Sun, Mercury, Pluto in the sign of Capricorn, as well as Saturn and Jupiter being in a Saturnian sign. I do believe that this is going to bring the rise of a country, and I'm guessing it's going to be China, or something to do with the Middle East. I mean, something to do with the Middle East, yes, because those are Capricornian territories. And I still don't necessarily like that Mars being on the midheaven. I'm expecting in the next few years some type of clashes between big powers, such as, for instance, China and US. Well, I think I've given you guys plenty of information to think about. It's going to be a little bit easier year overall. I've tried to kind of summarize what I'm expecting to happen in the next 4 years, but overall the next 20 years, while this Saturn-Jupiter conjunction lasts. Feel free to ask any questions, and if you wish to book an annual reading with me, then please do so you will be able to see the link below. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you will have a wonderful Christmas, and I wish everyone a prosperous 2021, because basically we start in a decade and I think we deserve it. take care of yourself. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.